Okay. Good morning. Ako si lumalapit ko. Dito tayo, lapit tayo. Ayan. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, yeah. Good morning, I'm John Antipino. I'm the sales head of ILLUMINATE Alabang Inc. And with me is
RJ Ambrado, one of the broker sales managers. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our very special event for today.
Yes, we're all excited sa event. Ito, alam niyo RJ,
Ako din. Kasi
alam niyo ba ito ako guys na stress? Kasi when Attorney MJ said yes to our invitation na mag-guest speaker for this webinar series. Actually, this is the first of the webinar series na gagawin namin for all of the real estate na topic. When she said yes, sabi ko, RJ, saan natin ilalagay si Attorney MJ? Gusto ko yung pinakamagandang lobby ng projects natin. And then I asked all the and marketing, sabi ko, saan ba yung piman po sir message? Sabi niya, sir, lobby, bago pa. Ayun. So,
exciting.
So sabi ko kagad kay Magic, Magic Cortez is our marketing. So sabi ko na, yeah, I want that for Attorney MJ. And then we messaged Attorney MJ. Attorney MJ, we have a very beautiful venue for you, for your talk. And then, ayun. So it's
yours because this is our first time to do it. And then first time with a webinar for to have a guest na attorney at the same time, bago din yung lobby natin.
Yes,
diba?
so
Exciting, no?
Lahat today, so yung nag-join today, lahat ng ipapakita namin sa inyo bago, new topic, and new lobby, and of course, the first in the webinar series of ILLUMINATE Alabang Inc. We are the FAI Brokers League, and today, RJ, ano ba yung mga viewers natin ngayon?
Of course, I'd like to say thank you everyone for joining us tonight, this afternoon. But I will request everyone, boss, to stay because we have a very special, meron kaming special to offer sa inyong lahat later on. Kaya stay tuned.
It's a special treat from Brokers League and of course from Attorney MJ. Sobrang ito guys, at least sa inyo, na for me, it's talaga special treat because yung mga broker friends ko nag-message sa akin, sayang hindi kami makapag-mute na lang po ng mga microphones natin para marinig po talaga natin mabuti yung presentation ni Attorney MJ. And then, we have a Q&A. Diba? Ito one of the, di pa pala the special treat. We have a Q&A mamaya for Attorney MJ. So after, pag nag-present po si Attorney MJ, list down nyo lang po lahat ng mga questions nyo. At the end of the presentation, Attorney MJ will answer all of your questions.
Exciting, boss.
Very exciting. So hindi na tayo mag-play ng fortune video right now because na-play na kanina. So, yung ano nga today is, nag-blurred, no? Okay, so today, before we start, we have a special guest. Tawagin na natin, Miss Magic. Can you please help us? Miss Magic Cortez is our marketing for Prestige. She will present to us yung bagong lobby. Ibabaliktad ko nga, pahawak nga please. Sorry guys hawakan ko na lang. Bakit nagaganon yung phone ko? Okay, this is Miss Magic Cortez, our marketing for Prestige. RJ, sama mo si Miss Magic. Sige, Miss Magic.
So Dan, thank you for having me here today. Alright, so welcome everyone to Fortune Hill Study. So just recently, actually, Fortune Hill unveiled its improved lab. So this is in its for its residents, of course, and then of course the recently launched lab incorporates.
So bakit kakalos na netong strategy? Pinano talaga nila for every residents for this party.
What we really wanted to have in here is to incorporate modern and state-of-the-art features such as, of course, comfortable seating areas, improved accessibility options, and of course, the renovation focused on creating a welcoming and aesthetically pleasing space for social interactions and of course, relaxation. So hopefully everyone that is viewing us today, hopefully we can soon tour you here. Just contact the team of Sir Jan Antolino and
Thank you,
yes,
Miss Magic.
hopefully we can see you face to face here.
Yes, and as I'm saying right now, very sophisticated, very elegantly loving. You know, what a kind, right? Why don't we tour konti boss yung viewers natin sa lobby na?
Okay,
no?
sige.
Mas maganda.
Okay, so here's the lobby. Okay. Sige.
Yun.
Okay, di ba? Hinaw na. So RJ, for all of you, yung 3 times in, the most exciting part is and Jay. What's the topic, RJ?
Yung very special topic to because acquiring ownership over real property. I'm definitely speechless right now kasi ang daming brokers natin who are very excited. No, they are actually waiting for this particular event.
Okay. So please do the honor, RJ, to introduce our speaker. Nung ano mga RJ, nung binasa ko yung introduction, kinabahan ako eh.
Ako din. Sabi ko baka hindi ko
Sabi ko, paano ba natin mabibigyan justice tong pag-i-introduce? Pero you know what? Attorney Andy, sobra siyang, actually yung word ko sa kanya, nakita ko siya ulit. At ang cool naman ito, kahit ganito yung credentials. No? So guys, di na namin patatagalin. RJ, please introduce our guest speaker.
Right, it's my honor to introduce our guest speaker for this afternoon's event. None other than one of a kind and a book author po. Her name, speechless ako, di ba? Ganito ako, guys, speechless right now, introducing our guest speaker. Nanginginig yung laman ko, actually, no? Definitely, guys, viewers natin dyan, definitely kung kayo dito sa katayuan ko, you will feel the same, right? Right. Partner, MAMALATEO-JUSAY and lawyer. She was admitted to the New York State Bar in USA in 2009 in the Philippines. Also, she has a degree in Bachelor of Science, Commerce major in Business Management from De La Salle University, Manila, and a Juris Doctor. Non-thesis degree from Institute of Law of San Sebastian College, Recoletos. In 2013, Attorney Joy received a certificate on international housing finance from the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, USA. She began her career in taxation at Punong Bayan at Arroyo Grande, Toronto International, or formerly Ernst Young International, serving as a tax senior in its division. She later joined a partner of VC MAMALATEO and Associate, which was founded by her father, Victorino C. MAMALATEO. The firm was renamed in 2016. The law offices of MAMALATEO, Victorino, Guevara, and MAMALATEO-JUSAY, carrying on the entrenched practice of providing work with the firm of 2021. As a tax practitioner, Attorney Joy has handled a wide range of tax and corporate service for individual and corporate clients since 2000, conducting tax studies, tax planning, rendering tax opinions and advice, contract review, securing confirmatory rulings from the BIR, estate settlements of the deceased person, and corporate registration and dissolution, among others. Having been in the tax practice for almost 2 decades, Attorney Joy conducted lectures on different topics on taxation for different professional organizations, as a resource author, speaker for her publisher, and also a pre-week bar review on taxation. In 2015, Attorney Joy expanded her practice and began career in real estate. She became a licensed real estate appraiser and a broker in the Philippines during the same year. She is an international property specialist, designer, and a member of National Association of Real Estate Planner, program by the American Academy of Financial Management in the Philippines. Beginning September of 2020, she also became the president of Jaguar Realty Service Incorporated, a company she built with her brothers, three brothers, who are also a licensed real estate service practitioner like herself. The company provides a wide range of real estate services to its clients based locally and real estate practice. She likewise launched a teaching career in 2019 of real estate and ethical standards real estate practice under the course of Bachelor of Science in Real Estate at Trinity University of Asia in Quezon City. She also conducts review of real estate documentation, taxation for candidates of real estate appraiser and a broker licensure exam given out by the Professional Regulation Commission. Her rewarding experience in teaching has given her the inspiration and motivation to continuously revise books on taxation and real property, which Attorney Joy has co-authored with her late father, Attorney Vic, such as Real Property Ownership Registration, Development, Contract and Taxation year 2011, Reviewer on Property Ownership and Taxation 2011 as well, Tax and Rights and Remedies 2016, Reviewer on Taxation of 2019, Real Property Ownership and Registration 2021, and Real Property Contract Taxation 2022, and the last one is Reviewer on Taxation 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you our guest speaker for the special webinar, Attorney MJ MAMALATEO-JUSAY.
Wow. RJ.
Grabe, boss.
Ibang level.
Ibang level.
Ibang.
Nung binasa ko pa lang, umatong ako dun sa stage.
Yes,
Parang,
yes,
grabe talaga. Iba yung feeling.
Yes. So, nagre-ready na ngayon si Attorney MJ. Nakita niyo naman po yung
Credentials.
Yung credentials ng speaker natin. That's the FAI treat for you guys, yung sa mga nakikinig ngayon. Ito series of webinar. So,
Grabe, no, ang haba, di ba? Nakita niyo naman. Very special. Hindi basta-basta yung guest speaker natin for today, boss.
Okay. So for the brokers na mga nakikinig ngayon, we're from the Philippines Alabang Inc. Just want to share that meron kaming gift sa inyo. We have a new office at our Filigree Show Suites at Alabang.
Yeah.
So our dear brokers, anytime you just message us, you can go there. We can assist you sa mga project presentations, site appreciation. So lahat ng brands from Filigree, Prestige, and Aspire. Okay? So, hindi na tayo patatagalin. Alam ko lahat kayo excited na. Ako nga hindi pa ako nakakatulog actually. I'm so excited. So,
ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me as your guest speaker for today. I am very excited to present to all of you. This is the first time I'm conducting a lecture face-to-face while I am here at the venue to give out the lecture. My participants are still online, but hopefully soon we will be able to do lectures wherein all of us will be together face-to-face. So I'll start my presentation. I'll just share my screen. Can you see my screen? Can everybody? Can they talk? Yes. I know they can already see my presentation.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So can you see the slides? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, sige. So, all right. So, um, today, our topic real property. This is you will learn as a real the different modes of transferring ownership over real property. So let's begin. All right. So there are different modes of acquiring ownership. So I group them into two major categories. We have the voluntary modes of acquiring ownership, and there are also involuntary modes of acquiring ownership. So under voluntary modes, why is it voluntary? Voluntary because the consent of all the parties involved in the transaction are present. No? So all parties involved in the transaction voluntarily gave their consent in the transfer of ownership over real property. Now, why involuntary modes? Because this is the type of transfer of ownership over real property where the party, the transferor, or the owner transfers ownership over real property by force. It was compulsory on the part of the transferor. It was probably against the will of the transferor. So we will discuss all the different types of voluntary and involuntary modes throughout this presentation. Okay, so let's begin with the voluntary modes. So there are also different types of voluntary modes of transferring ownership over real properties. There is donation, there is tradition or delivery. Under this mode, this is where the contract of sale will fall under. So under voluntary modes, we also have public grants. Now, public grants, there are different types. Public grants are those titles that are given administratively by the government, but under voluntary modes, the public grants under this are number one, homestead patent and sales patent. We will discuss them one as well. So under involuntary modes, why involuntary modes? Because the transfer of ownership over real property was probably against the will of the transferor or the owner to transfer the ownership to the transfer. Now, under involuntary modes, we have also different types. We have number one, prescription. And under that, there are two different types. We have administrative legalization or adjudication, and we also have judicial legalization. So under also involuntary modes, for my students, for my previous students, I'm so sure you've already heard about accretion. You've also heard about expropriation, forced sales, and of course, succession. So again, later on, we will discuss all these different modes and voluntary modes of transferring ownership one by one. So let's start with the voluntary of acquiring ownership. Hold on.
Kita mo may estudyante, hindi ka na pwede na sa makulog sa bintana. Kita! Tawag ako ate Kisser! Ganun mo, kailangan mo.
I-mute all.
Sorry for the interruption. We have the first type of voluntary mode of acquiring ownership, which is through donation. So what is a donation? Donation is an act of liberality whereby a person, the donor, disposes gratuitously of a thing. It can be real property or a right over real property in favor of another person who is the donee, and this donee has to accept the donation. So a donation is a gift given by a donor to a donee, which takes effect during the lifetime of the donor and the donee. So this is a donation which takes effect during the lifetime of the parties, the donor and the donee. So there are different requirements. There are different requirements for a valid donation to take place. So it's important also for us, for brokers, especially if we assist our clients in these types of transactions, to know what are the different requirements for a valid donation to take place. So number one, the donor should have the capacity to enter into contracts. Number two, there must be donative intent. So the donor must really intend to gratuitously transfer or dispose or alienate his property or rights over his property to the donee. Number three, there must be delivery. There must be delivery. This delivery may either be actual delivery or it may also be constructed delivery. And number four, there must be acceptance. Acceptance of the donation by the donee. So these are the essential requirements for any donation to be valid. Now, when you are transferring real property, this code adds another requirement for the validity of the donation of real property. That requirement is that the deed or the instrument transferring ownership over donated property be in a public instrument. Ano ba ang public instrument? What's a public instrument? Instrument only means that the deed or the contract, the donation is notarized. No? So notarized if all the parties are here in the Philippines. Now, if not all the parties are here in the Philippines, it may be a requirement that one of the parties have the deed of donation and the acceptance be consularized if they are based abroad or outside the Philippines or apostille. No? So these are the requirements in order for the deed of donation and the acceptance by the donee to comply with the requirement that it be in a public instrument. Why is it important that the donation of real property be in a public instrument? It is important because otherwise, if it is not notarized, if it is not consularized, if it is not apostilled, then the donation of real property is void. What does it mean when the donation is void? It means that there is as if no donation took place. So it is important, very important, that the deed of donation be notarized, be consularized, be apostilled. Okay. Now, talking about delivery. Now, when you are donating real property, for my students, now, for my former students, I'm so sure you remember this discussion. How do you deliver real property? How does the donor deliver real property to the donor? The actual delivery of real property is not possible because how can you actually deliver land? How can you deliver a house? How can you deliver a condominium unit, a townhouse from the donor to the donee? The actual delivery is impossible. So when you are dealing with real property, the required type of delivery is constructive delivery. And how do you do constructive delivery? through notarization, through the execution of a public instrument. So you will see that the requirement of the deed of donation being in a public instrument is not only required for the validity of the donation of real property, but it is also required to effect the delivery, the constructive delivery of the property from the donor to the donor. Because without delivery, there is no donation. Okay, so those are basic requirements for a donation to be valid. So these are the things that you have to be mindful about when you are assisting your clients in this type of transaction. So now we will go to what are the applicable taxes now when you are donating real property. Okay, so under the train law, no, RA 10963, which became effective on January 1, 2018, the donor's tax was already changed for it was rates. There were rates for donations, but now under the donor's tax, which is 6% of the total gifts in excess of 250,000. What does this mean? It means that for every year, the first 250,000 donation is exempt. So only the donation in excess or above 250,000 will be subject to donor's tax at the rate of 6%. No? So there were also other changes brought about by the train law, such as the removal of the distinction of donations between related parties and non-related parties. So now, under the train law, it doesn't matter whether the donation is made between related parties or non-related parties. Only the single rate of 6% tax will be imposed on the donation. Okay. The next tax that is imposable on a donation is the DST or documentary stamp tax. This DST for donations of real property train law. So previous to the train law, prior to the train law, there was no DST imposable when you are donating real property. Under the train law, the DST, which is at the rate of 50 pesos for every 1,000 pesos of the value of the donated property, will now be imposed as a DST on the donation of real property. So, paano ba mas madali maalala yung rate ng DST? To remember the rate, that's actually just 1.5%. Now, 1.5% of the fair market value of the donated property. So you have 6% donor's tax plus 1.5% DST. So the total taxes that you need to pay when you are donating real property is 7.5%. So the donor's tax and the DST that you pay to the national government, the BIR, as the collecting agency. So aside from the national internal revenue taxes imposable on the donation of real property, there are also local taxes that are imposable on the donation of real property. Hold on. For the local taxes, for every donation, you have to pay the transfer tax, the local transfer tax to the local treasurer where the property donated is located. So if the property is located in the province, the transfer tax rate is 50% of 1% of the fair market value of the property. Now, if the real property donated is located in a city or municipality, Then the local transfer tax rate that is imposable is higher, no? It's 75% of 1% of fair market value of the donated property. So meron kang national taxes, meron ka ring local taxes that will be payable when you donate real property. Okay, so that's the first mode of voluntary transfer. Now let's go to the next. So the next is tradition or delivery. Ano ba ito, attorney? Ano ba itong tradition or delivery? As I mentioned earlier, no, delivery or tradition may either be actual delivery or constructive delivery. Okay. Now, for this type or for this mode of acquiring ownership, it only means that when parties enter into a contract, example, a contract of sale, the contract only entitles the parties to the transfer of ownership over real property. When you enter into a contract, the execution of the contract itself is not the mode of transferring ownership over real property. The delivery, is actually the one which affects the transfer of ownership over real property. So when what is involved is real property, paano nga natin dinideliver, right? It is only through constructive delivery. Constructive delivery is done by having the contract be in a public instrument. At a public instrument, it only means that the contract is notarized or consular or apostille. Because itself will not transfer the ownership of the real property from the seller to the buyer. In order to effect the transfer of ownership, contract has to be notarized. It needs to be notarized because having the contract notarized affects the delivery. That is the delivery which is required in order to transfer the ownership from the seller to the buyer. Okay, so let's talk more about this type of sale. Ano ba tong contract na to? This is the contract that I'm so sure most of us as real estate brokers are very much familiar with. A contract of sale. Diba? In a contract of sale, there are usually at least two parties. So we have the seller and we have the buyer. So in a contract of sale, what are the obligations of the seller? So there are actually two obligations of a seller in a contract of sale. Number one, he is obligated to transfer the ownership, obviously, right? The seller is obligated to transfer the ownership over the real property. And number two, he is obligated to deliver. Ayan na naman yung deliver. No? So one of the obligations also of the seller is to deliver the real property, which is the subject of the sale. And how do you deliver again? Through delivery, having the contract of sale notarized, consularized, or apostille. Okay. So the other party to a contract of sale is the buyer. Eh ano naman tong obligation ng buyer? So in a contract of sale, the buyer also has his own obligations. And number one, which is the most obvious obligation of a buyer, is to pay the purchase price of the real property, right? And number two, the buyer also has to accept the delivery of the real property, which is object of the contract of sale. So again, I want to emphasize to you that execution of the contract itself will not transfer the ownership of real property from the seller to the buyer. What is required? Aside from the execution of the contract of sale, you need to have that in a public instrument. You need to have that contract of sale notarized, because if there is no notarization of the contract to sale, remember this, I want to really emphasize this, no, because it also has something to do with the type of notary that you use. No? So I'm so sure a lot of you've experienced as practicing agents or now real estate brokers. No? There are a lot of notary publics, but I want you to also be mindful about the notary public that we use when you are having a contract of sale notarized, because it is very important. The notarization is very important. The contract of sale, the deed of sale, has to be notarized by someone who is qualified to notarize. And here in the Philippines, only lawyers, not any lawyer, a lawyer who is commissioned, no, to become a notary public may notarize documents. So please, when you are also assisting your clients, just make sure you pick a notary public who is qualified. No? Hindi lang yung mga nasa tabi lang ng daan. No? You choose someone who is really qualified as a notary public, because the notarization of a contract of sale has a very important implication on the transfer of ownership over real property. Okay, so those are the basics that we need to know about the contract of sale and the delivery as a mode of transferring ownership over real property. Okay, so now when we are talking about the sale of real property, what are the applicable taxes, no, on the sale of real property? But for most of you who are already familiar with selling, no, real properties, I'm so sure you've encountered a lot of transactions already. But today we'll just go over what are all the possible applicable taxes that are imposable when you are selling real property. And in order for you to determine what are the correct, no, what are the correct taxes that is imposable on selling real property, there are three basic things that we need to look at. No? When you are selling real property, these are the three important things that you should first know. Why should you know these things? Because after you have determined, you have your answer to these three questions, then you will be able to determine also what are the applicable taxes, what are the correct rates to be applied when you are selling real property. So these are the three things that you need to know. Number one, who are the parties to a sale? No? Number two, what is the nature of the seller? No? And number three, what type of one by one? So number one, so who are the parties in a sale of real property? So obviously, and we have the buyer. So for the seller, it's not just knowing who the seller is. When you are looking at the seller, you also have to know, is this seller an individual or a corporation? Is this seller engaged in real estate business, or is he engaged in business but not necessarily in real estate business? Attorney, ano ba yung real estate business na yan? Okay. So, those payers, those sellers that are engaged in real estate business are the following. Okay, so you listen. Huh? You are engaged in real estate business if you are a real estate dealer, meaning you engaged in the business of buying and selling real property. You're also engaged in real estate business when you are a real estate developer. So real estate developers are those individuals or those corporations who engage in the business of developing raw lots into subdivisions, into townhomes, or even commercial properties. Okay. You are also engaged in real estate business when you are engaged in business of leasing or renting out real property. So you may also be considered that in real estate business when you are habitually engaged in real estate transactions. So when you are engaged in any of those, no, you are a real estate dealer, you are a real estate developer, you are a real estate lessor, no? Or you are a someone who's habitually engaged in real estate transactions, you are considered to be engaged in real estate business. Why is it important to know if you are engaged in real estate business? Because later on, it has an implication on the nature of the assets that you have. So, we will go into that later. So that is on the side. Now for the buyer side, it is also relevant or important to know, ano ba yung ginagawa ng buyer mo? Is your buyer engaged in trade or business? Or is your buyer not engaged in trade or business? So later on, you will also understand why it's important for us to know these things. Okay. So again, why do you need to know what is the status of your seller, whether your seller is engaged in real estate business or your seller is not engaged in real estate business? Because it has something to do with the nature of the asset in the hands of your seller. If you are a seller who is engaged in real estate business, all your real properties that you have will be considered as your ordinary asset. So when you are holding these assets or ordinary assets, iba yung taxation, iba yung taxes applicable dun sa real properties, especially when you sell them. Okay. So when you are not engaged in real estate business, those real properties that you use in your trade or business will be considered as ordinary asset. But if you also hold real properties that you do not use in your business, you only hold them for investment purposes, then those properties may be considered as your capital asset. And when you hold capital asset and you dispose or you sell capital asset, it is also subject to a different type of taxation. Iba din yung applicable taxes when you are selling capital assets. Okay. So aside from knowing what is the nature of the asset in the hands of the seller, it is also important for you to know what type of sale will this transaction be. Will it be a cash sale, meaning the full consideration or the full purchase price is already paid at the time that you enter or sign the deed of sale, or will it be a type of sale that is on installment? Okay. Now, when the sale is on install, there are also two types. This is very common among real estate developers. Okay. For most of you who are engaged in selling, I'm so sure you've encountered a lot of these types of transactions when you are selling projects, no, of the developers that you are handling. No? So kapag installment sale, there are also two types. Number one, it is a deferred payment sale not on the installment plan. And number two, a sale on the installment plan. So what's the difference? When it is a deferred payment sale, not on the installment plan, the initial payments for the real property that you are selling is more than 25% of the gross selling price. Now, if it is this type of installment sale, it will actually be considered as a cash sale. Kahit in reality, installment sale siya. But when the initial payments is more than 25% of the gross selling price, it will be, for taxation purposes, treated as a cash sale. Now, when the sale is a sale on the installment cent or less of the gross selling price, then it will be depending on the amount of installments, no, that will be paid throughout the year. Okay, so now we will go to the applicable tax rates when we are selling real property. So I'm so sure ito very familiar na kayo. Because this is the type of transactions that you would usually be encountering, though. It is the type of tax that is imposable when what you are selling is a capital asset. So kailan nga capital asset? When it does not fall under any of the four types of ordinary asset. No? So capital asset because this holding this asset for investment purposes. Now, when you are selling capital asset, how do you determine what is the tax rate? So when you are selling capital asset, it's subject to 6% capital gains tax. No, it is a final withholding tax which is imposable on the gross selling price or the fair market value of the property being sold. So, pag nagbebenta ka ng capital asset, ang titignan mo na ngayon, i-compare mo naman, how much is the selling price and how much is the zonal value or the market value appearing on the tax declaration of the property. So you will choose which one is the highest. Which one is the highest value from among the three? Yung gross selling price, yung zonal value, and the market value on the tax declaration. So you will pick up the highest amount and multiply that to the 6% capital gains tax in order to determine what is the income tax due when you are selling capital asset. Okay. So when you are selling capital asset, ang applicable na tax is income tax. Walang business tax. Kasi nga, ang binibenta natin is only a capital asset. Now, when you are selling an ordinary asset, there will be two types of taxes applicable. Meron kang income tax and meron kang business tax. Attorney, ano ba yung business tax na yan? Okay. So business tax later on, we will also discuss, there are two types. There is percentage tax at 3% and also VAT at 12%. Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, so when you are selling ordinary asset, ano yung mga applicable taxes? Number one, income tax. So the income tax rate when you are selling ordinary asset will depend on whether your seller is an individual or if your seller is a corporation or a partnership. So if your seller is selling ordinary asset, it will be subject, the net income of the individual will be subject to the graduated rates of 15% to 35%. Now, if your seller is selling ordinary asset, it will be subject to the 25% regular corporate income tax on the net income. Now, as I mentioned earlier, aside from the income tax, the business tax is also applicable when you are selling ordinary asset. Ano yung mga business tax? There are two types. So will be the business tax applicable to you. So it depends. So if your gross annual receipt do not exceed 3 million, the applicable business tax to you is percentage tax at 3% on your gross receipts. Now, if your gross annual income is 3 million or more, you subject to the 12% VAT on gross receipts. So when you are selling the asset, meron ka nang babayaran na income tax, meron ka pang babayaran na either percentage tax or VAT. So that's the difference. No? So it's really important for you to know ano ba yung nature ng asset that you are selling. Because again, when you are selling capital asset, only subject to the capital gains tax at 6%. But when you are selling ordinary asset, it is subject to income tax and business tax. Okay. All right. So, okay. The net transfer of ownership over real property are public grants. So, as I mentioned earlier, there are different types of public grants. And for voluntary modes of acquiring ownership, we will be discussing only two types of transfers through public grants. So what are public grants? So public grants, it is the administrative method of acquiring public lands. So the only public lands that may be disposed by the government are those that are alienable and disposable agricultural lands of the public domain. So these are the only types of public lands because there are different types of public lands. And the only type of public land that the government may dispose of through patents, the issuance of patents, are alienable and disposable agricultural lands of the public domain. So how do you get ownership over these public lands? It is through the issuance of patents by the DENR. So yung government, yung nag-i-issue ng title. So yung government, yung nagtatransfer ng ownership over the real property to the patentee. So patents, these are the titles that are administratively issued by the DENR. So again, there are different types of patents, no? But for purposes of voluntary modes of acquiring ownership, we will be discussing only the homestead patent and the sales patent. Okay. So, paano ba tong mga homestead patent and sales patent? The title here on this slide is actually an example of an actual title, patent, no? Sales patent. No? So I included it in the slide. So you can see that there are really, totoo siya, it really happens that there are sales patents that are being issued by the government. So, sinong government agency ang nag-i-issue ng titles? It is the DENR. So, homestead patent, these are the patents that are issued by the government, by the DNR to qualified applicants. So, these are the agricultural lands that are not yet occupied. So, wala pang nakatira, wala pang nagko-cultivate. So these are the agricultural lands that are yet occupied. No? And these unoccupied agricultural lands are made open for certain qualifications for an applicant to be before they can apply. So the requirements are that the applicant be a Filipino citizen. So syempre, requirement yan, di ba? Because citizenship, Filipino citizenship is a requirement for one to own real property in the Philippines. So aside from that, you also have to enter the agricultural land and actually reside and cultivate the land that is given to you. So once you have met all the requirements, then you will be homestead patent covering that piece of agricultural land by the DNR. So the other type is sales patent. Sales patent, so as the name suggests, merong sale na nangyayari. So there are also two types of sales here. The government sells their land, no? It can be through a public auction or a private sale. So those that are sold under a public auction, it may be agricultural land, residential land, commercial land, or industrial land. But in a private sale, it only involves residential land. So if you want to know more about how these homestead patents and sales patent may be availed of, no, or if you are qualified to apply for these types of patents, my book, one of my books will discuss what are the different. Okay. So now let's go to the involuntary modes of acquiring ownership. Sige, hinga muna tayo. I'll just take a sip. Hold on. Okay. Let's go to the involuntary modes of acquiring ownership. Review natin. So again, there are different types. So we have acquisitive prescription, we have accretion, we have expropriation, we have forced sales, and succession. So again, we will discuss this one by one. So ano ba ang acquisitive prescription? How does the title or ownership over real property get transferred through acquisitive prescription? And siguro mag-iisip kayo, paano nga ba na through prescription or through the lapse of time, the occupant of real property may become the new owner of that real property? So is it possible that I will enter any real property, and after a certain number of years, I can say that through acquisitive prescription, I am now the new owner of this real property. No, it doesn't work like that. Now, acquisitive prescription only applies when what we are dealing with are, again, public lands. What type of public land? Alienable and deedable agricultural lands, public domain. It cannot involve privately owned land. It cannot involve privately owned land. Acquisitive prescription only applies when what you are dealing with is the acquisition of ownership over real property, which is owned by the state, which is owned by the government. And this is the type of public land that is disposable. And the only type of land that is disposable is the agriculture, those alienable and disposable agricultural lands of the public domain. So when you are talking about acquisitive prescription, there are also types. There is an administrative legalization, meaning through a government agency or the DNR, the government issues a administrative title in favor of an applicant. Or it may also be through judicial legalization, wherein the applicant has to file a land registration case in court. So we will discuss this also. Okay, let's start with the administrative legalization. Itong administrative legalization involves the issuance by the DENR of free patents. So again, the picture here on the slide is actually an actual title, no, a free patent that was issued, no, by the DENR. So meron talagang ganito. So the government really issues free patents. So how do you qualify for the issuance of this free patent? Now, there are also different types of free patents. Ngayon, meron na tayong agricultural free patent, then meron na rin tayong residential free patent. And there are different requirements, no, when you want to apply for each type. So under an agricultural free patent, the applicant, very strict yung requirement, the applicant must not only be a Filipino citizen, the applicant must be a natural born Filipino. So kapag naturalized ka, hindi ka na pwede mag-apply ng agricultural free patent. Only natural born Filipinos may apply. And what is the maximum land area that they may apply for? So under the 1987 Constitution, they may apply for up to a maximum of 12 hectares. No? And what is the length of time that is required before the applicant may apply for agricultural free patent? So ang requirement is now 20 years. So if you are familiar with free patent, siguro inabutan niyo pa yung time na ang requirement, yung possession requirement is at least 30 years. No? But under Republic Act 11573, this was enacted under the Duterte administration. No? The number of years, 30 years, but now under RA 11573, the number of years required is only 20 years. So 20 years, you have to continuously occupy and cultivate that agricultural land that you are applying for. Okay. Now, if you want to apply for a residential free patent, there are also different requirements. So you can see here the citizenship requirement is more lenient. Now, for residential patent, it may be any Filipino citizen. So whether you are natural born or if you are a naturalized citizen, you apply for a residential free patent. And the possession requirement for a residential free patent is only 10 years. So for 10 years, you must have actually resided on the land that you are applying for, no? And the maximum land area actually depends on where the property is located. If it's located in a highly urbanized city or in a municipality, so the land area would depend depending on the location. Okay. So another important thing that we have to know, no, about agricultural free patent. So before, when a free patent is issued, the patentee or the owner of the free patent is subject to certain conditions. So what are these conditions? So it doesn't mean that you are the registered owner of a free patent, that you are entitled to enjoy all the rights. Remember yung bundle of rights, diba? There are also restrictions being imposed by the government once the agricultural free patent is issued. So one of those restrictions was that within 5 years from the issuance of the free patent, the owner cannot encumber. Hindi mo pwedeng i-mortgage, hindi mo yan pwedeng ibenta. So there were restrictions within 5 years from the issuance of the free patent that you cannot encumber or alienate. You cannot sell it. You cannot mortgage your property. No? But this restriction also under the Duterte administration was removed. No? Under RA 11231, this was enacted in 2019. Now, the restrictions on the encumbrance and alienation of agricultural free patents were removed. Wala nang ganon. So once may issue ka na ng free patent, pwede mo na yan i-mortgage, pwede mo na yan ibenta. What will be issued to you now by the DNR is bonds. So that is one of the great introductions brought about by this new law. Okay. So the other type of acquisitive prescription is through judicial legalization. So what is judicial legalization? It is the filing of a land registration proceeding with the RTC. Okay. So when you resort to judicial legalization, there are also two types. Merong voluntary, meaning the applicant will file the land registration proceedings with the RTC, or there is also compulsory registration, wherein the owner is forced to participate or join the proceedings in court or a cadastral proceeding in order to determine your rights as the owner of a certain parcel of land. Okay. So under voluntary registration or in an ordinary land proceeding, you may file with the RTC once you have met these two requirements. So ano ba yung requirement? Syempre, yung Filipino citizenship again, that's a requirement, right? And the number of years of possession. So again, from 30 years, it was reduced to 20 years. 20 years of open, continuous, exclusive, and notorious possession by the applicant. And similar to free patents, the maximum land area that you may apply for is only 12 hectares. Okay, so that's COVID. Um, acquisitive prescription as now let's go to the next. It is through application. So if you will remember, yung one of the bundle of rights that we have, right of accession. Diba? Sa mga estudyante ko, sa mga naging discussion, one of right of accession that the owner of the principal of anything that is produced by the property, diba? Yung fruits, diba? We have natural fruits, we have industrial fruits, we have civil fruits. Okay? So you become owner of the fruits because of the right of accession. And it is also because of this right of accession that anything that is incorporated on your land or anything that is attached to your land, whether it is naturally done or of the property also becomes the owner's incorporated, whatever was added to the principal property becomes owned. So dito pumapasok yung accretion because accretion actually is soil or land that is received by the owner of a land adjacent to a river or adjacent to a lake. Ang tawag mo dun sa owner na yun, riparian owner. Riparian land, yung land adjacent to the river, river and adjacent to the lake. No? So, because of natural causes, let's say because of the current of the water, natural causes, sometimes nag-shift yung direction ng water, ng current ng water, and whatever soil or alluvium is added to your property gradually, so it has to be the gradual addition of soil or alluvium to your property that eventually that added soil, that added alluvium to your property will also become your property by accretion, by right of accession. Okay? So, ang question, ba, attorney, kapag meron bang land, may soil na nadadagdag dun sa property ko, if may property is adjacent to the lake, if may property is adjacent to the river, ibig sabihin pala ako na yung owner nun. Yes, you are the owner. But in order for that additional soil added to your property to be registered under you, you still have to file for a registration of title to land with the RTC. The registration of title to land over that accretions. Kung gusto mo talaga ma-secure yung ownership variation of title to land with the RTC. Next, meron din, I'm so sure sa mga creations also another mode, no, involuntary mode of acquiring ownership over property for obvious reasons, di ba? If you are the owner of your property, syempre hindi voluntary yung pag-release ko, nung pag-transfer mo ng title, right? It is it is it wants the domain that we also have to be mindful about whenever the government exercises the power of eminent domain. Pag nag-expropriate sila, we have to look into these two important requirements in order to determine is the taking of government valid, because not every taking of the government is valid. So you can also question, no? So ano ba itong dapat tingnan natin? So there are two major requirements for a valid expropriation. Number one is that the government takes private property for public purpose. There must be a public purpose for the taking of private property. And number two, there must be payment of just compensation. Hindi yan libre. The taking of government is not for free. So when the government takes private property for some public purpose, they have to compensate. The government has to compensate the owner. No? So ang tawag doon is just compensation. So you can still question also. Aryan report. This has also been discussed by former students. Now, if you will look into it, what is the comprehensive agrarian reform program? It is actually an exercise by the government of its mass expropriation. Because very wide yung taking. Lang. It was nationwide. It was nationwide and it covers all types of agricultural land nationwide. So under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, the landowner, yung agricultural landowner, allowed, may retention limits. The landowner is only allowed to retain hectares of agricultural land. And if the landowner has children, every child is also allowed to retain 3 hectares of agricultural land. Now, in excess of that, in excess of the retention limits, if the landowner owns more than that, then the landowner is forced to sell it. The landowner is forced to sell it to the government. So the government, they distribute this agricultural land to agrarian reform beneficiaries. Yun yung purpose no Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. So mass expropriation siya. It was a mass expropriation by the government. So under the CARPER, no, the execution or the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program was extended until June 30, 2014. So I don't know kung hanggang ngayon meron pa rin mga pinaprocess na mga CLOAs, no, or yung before under PD 27, yung emancipation patent. But this is also another type of acquiring ownership. Ito privately owned to. Privately owned agricultural land, which the government takes. No? Which the government takes. So, kung ikaw yung landowner, talagang wala kang choice. Compulsory yan. Wala kang magagawa. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, can I keep more than the 5 hectares that the 3 government yan? And you have to abide. You have to abide by it. So, it becomes compulsory on the part of the landowner to transfer his ownership over property. So next is yung forced sale. So syempre may iba din tayong klaseng forced sale. So what type of forced sales is when the national government or the local government unit levies real property and sells these real property in order to collect your delinquent national taxes or to collect your delinquent real property taxes. So the government, the BIR or the LGU has the power to levy on your real property if you have delinquent taxes. So ililevy ng government yung mga available na real property taxes and then ibebenta yan in a public auction. Now the proceeds of the public auction will now be used in order to pay your delinquent taxes. So it's possible to be done to collect national taxes or real property taxes. Now, once your real property is sold, under this type of transaction, the owner, the taxpayer, the delinquent taxpayer is given a redemption period of 1 year from the sale of the real property. So after the sale, the taxpayer whose property has been sold may redeem the property sold para mabawi niya yung ownership. But to do this, syempre, he has to pay for the delinquent taxes and also the expenses for this. So the other type of forced sale is the foreclosure of real estate mortgages. So ang real estate mortgage is actually an accessory contract. An accessory contract to a principal contract, which is usually a loan contract. So the real estate mortgage contract is entered into between the mortgagor, yung borrower, and the mortgagee, which is usually the bank or financial institutions. Now, the mortgage may be foreclosed by the mortgagee in case the mortgagor does not meet his obligations in the principal obligation. So let's say dun sa loan agreement, nag-miss na siya ng payments, nag-default na siya sa payments. So the mortgagee has the right to foreclose the mortgage of the mortgagor. And when the mortgage is foreclosed by the mortgagee, there are also 2 types. There is extrajudicial foreclosure and there is judicial foreclosure. So in an extrajudicial foreclosure, it is when the mortgagee, yung banko or yung financial institution, causes the mortgaged property to be sold in a public auction. So pag nag-default na yung borrower, the mortgagee has to foreclose the mortgage so that the mortgaged property may be sold in a public auction and the proceeds of the sale will be used to pay the outstanding loan of the mortgagor. So when it is through an extrajudicial foreclosure, the mortgagee is entitled also to redeem uh, his property. You call this right the right of redemption. So if the mortgagor is an individual, he has within 1 year from the registration of the sale to redeem his property. Now, when the mortgagor is a juridical person or a corporation, and the mortgagee is a bank or financial institution, the corporation only has 3 months to show an individual mortgagor. Okay, now when it is judicial foreclosure, it is when the mortgagee files a foreclosure suit in the RTC. No? So once the court issues a judgment of foreclosure, the mortgagor only has within 90 to 120 days to pay the outstanding loan or the outstanding obligation in order to retain the ownership over the mortgage property. Otherwise, once the court orders the confirmation of sale, the mortgagor loses his ownership over the mortgage property. And when it is a judicial foreclosure, generally, there is no right of redemption. Hindi yan katulad sa extrajudicial foreclosure na may right of redemption. Sa judicial foreclosure, generally, there is no right of redemption, only equity of redemption. The exception to the rule there is that when the mortgagee is the PNB or a bank. So under the general banking law, inaalaw na ngayon binibigyan na ngayon ng right of redemption yung mortgagor, even if it is through a judicial foreclosure. Okay. So last but not the least, under involuntary modes of acquiring ownership, we have succession. So under succession, this is the mode of transferring ownership through a last will or testament. If them left a will transferring the real property over a designated heir or beneficiary. Or it is also possible that ownership is transferred even if there is no last will or testament. So this is done through intestate succession. So in succession, there are 2 types. There is testate succession, meaning the decedent left the last will, or intestate succession, meaning the decedent left no will. So in either case, transfer of ownership over real property may be done. So, eto, ano ba yung mga applicable tax rates, no, kapag succession? So, the applicable tax is estate tax. And under the train law, the estate tax was also now made into a single rate, 6% na lang siya of the net estate of the decedent. And aside from making it into a single rate, the deadline for the filing of the tax return and the payment of the estate tax was extended from 6 months now 1 year from the decedent's death. So, who is liable to pay estate tax? So, if there is an executor or administrator, then he will be primarily liable. Now, if there is no executor or administrator, then the heirs or the beneficiaries will be subsidiary liable based presentation for today. No? So if you want to learn more about the intricacies, no, of each mode of transfer that we've discussed today, then this book, Real Property Ownership and Registration, will be very helpful to you. So this book is available through my publisher, no, yung Rex Publishing. So you can buy this book from any of their branches, or they also have an e-store. No, I've already included there the website where you can buy from their e-store, you know, and it's priced at 990 for this book. And then if you want to learn more about the different types of contracts and the applicable taxes, no, that each type of transfer to you. So it's also a Rex bookstore or through their electronic or their e-store, no, and it's priced at 1,300 per book. Now, for today, I brought 10 books each. No? So as a gift for you, for those of you who attended, I can offer a 5% discount and a signed copy if you want to avail of the book. So I have the books here with me. So just let us know if you want to avail of any of the books. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned a lot from this discussion. Right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney MJ. Well, that was a very, very informative talk. Di ba?
Grabe.
Ang dami kong na-receive na messages telling me na, Jan, thank you so much sa pag-guest ni Attorney MJ. Actually, sinabi nila, sayang hindi nakapunta yung mga iba namin kasama. Pero don't worry, sabi ko sa kanila, sa sobrang bait ni Attorney MJ, nalambing namin siya na this is recorded webinar, and then we'll post this. After this talk, parang nahihiya na ako sa isang lambing natin, yung special treat natin sa kanila.
Kaya
Okay. So actually, sa lahat ng viewers na nanonood ngayon, we'll just let you watch muna yung Fortune Hill, and then after that video, let's go for the Q&A. Ang dami na namin nare-receive na questions from Attorney MJ. Pagpahingayin lang po natin si Attorney, and then
ready with your questions.
ready with your questions. Okay, so
And please watch this video first and we'll get back to you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney MJ.
Stay tuned for the surprise po. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Thank you so much, everyone. We still have 80 viewers, 80 million viewers in the house. Thank you so much, guys, for staying tuned. Maraming salamat po. I know, guys, you are excited for the special treat na sinasabi namin earlier. Before we proceed with the Q&A, we have a very special treat announcement. Okay,
To all the viewers right now na nag-join, sabi ko when ano kasi, we met Attorney MJ with the QCNRB event.
Town hall.
So when we attended that event, sabi ko kay RJ, mabait nila, no?
So,
Si Attorney MJ, Attorney Ernie, si Ma'am Lourdes. Sabi ko, RJ, pakilala mo. Maglalambing ako. So ito yun. So that's what that's ito yung story behind of this webinar. Naglambing kami kay Attorney MJ. Tapos after this presentation, sabi ko, RJ, nahihiya ako kay Attorney MJ. Pero sige, sabi ko, lubos-lubusin na rin natin. So here's the special treat sa mga nag-abang. And then, of course, tinapos yung very informative presentation of Attorney MJ. So here's the treat.
I got it. This one is Real Property Ownership and Registration 2021 edition. This is the latest edition of book ni Attorney. And this is 990.
Okay. And then this one is Real Property Contracts and Taxation 2022 edition by Attorney. So here's the special treat, di ba? To all the viewers right now na magme-message on this Zoom that you want to buy this book, you will all get a 5% discount
Just for today.
just for today. Just for today. But wait, there's more. Diba? There's a special treat. Nilubos-lubos na namin si Attorney MJ. To all the viewers right now na mag-purchase ng book, pipirmahan ni Attorney yung libro.
Special signature po from our guest speaker po.
So, sa lahat po mag-message niyo yan, just click the message that you want to purchase, you get the book. 20 books lang po nandito ngayon yung pipirma ni Attorney.
Special discount.
Yes, yung special discount and of course yung may pirma ni Attorney.
And of course, unahan ko na. Unahan ko na. Alam ka naman, di ba? Tayo nandito eh.
Pero meron pa tinatapos eh.
Isa pa yung hahabol.
Meron kasi, alam ko that marami ng brokers. Okay,
Yes,
by the way, this is BSM Visa.
Yes.
Yes. Hindi pa tapos yung yung webinar. May nag-message na kay Liza ng mga brokers. Sabi nila, meron bang dalang book si Attorney MJ? Baka pwede, eto na po yun. So, ano yung purchase ng book?
That's right.
Taxation. Okay.
The first title po is Real Property Ownership and Registration 2021 edition. Ito po. You can take screenshots po. Okay, liwanag ba? And the second book naman po, this is editor.
Property con Attorney MJ. Ayan. So we have here Attorney.
Kunin ko itong isa, and with Ma'am Lisa. So, meron na lang po 18
So,
for this one.
Can we and
2020.
ayan.
Here's the story.
Attorney MJ, maraming salamat.
So, Attorney, how much is this one again? This is
Focus on ownership and registration. This is 990 divided from next month. But for today, we are offering it a 5% discount because we already have the copies here, and with a personal signature.
Of course. Actually, yun yung nagpalat.
yes. And since, Attorney, ako yung nauna ngayon. May special signature.
Okay, o sige.
Live natin ginagawa.
Ginagawa mo yung broker ni Lisa. Sige, pero una ka na. Ano ba may Dear RJ pa ba yan?
Kahit hindi na ako. Signature lang po, masaya na ako. See guys, this is real. Ano lang po, raise your hand, message lang po sa chat box kasi limited lang po yung miss.
2021 edition.
Okay, sige.
Pa-screenshots na lang, Sir Del. Right.
May mga...
Wow. Guys, totoo to. This is the signature of attorney. Sobrang thank you, attorney. Ma'am Lisa, meron ka pa sa'yo.
Sa broker mo, anong book? Eh, guys,
Nagmamahin po. Ito, may nagmamahin na. So may listahan din.
so lahat po yan meron. So,
Yes po.
mag-sign na rin sa
Pa-message na lang po, will message niyo po sa chat box for the payment details. Pwede po, ano po bang payment natin, attorney?
Ay, sige, we'll discuss na lang that yung sa ano.
Oh, sige po.
Yung sa mga mag-message ngayon, our SAA will get in touch with you para si Attorney MJ is mapapagdating na with the Q&A. Then kami po lahat ang tatangsak nito. Yun ang pangako ko, Attorney MJ. Sabi ko, Attorney, thank you for the limited to.
So,
Limited to.
okay natin sa attorney boss.
Thank you. Sige.
Us, in answering the questions, your interesting questions.
We're so blessed, RJ. Alam nyo guys, ganito pa mabait ang mga taga-QC
QC
and
and RB.
Yes. Full package sa Attorney Bernie.
Everyone.
Diba? Ganun tayo ka full pack here. So, pupunta na sila dun sa laptop. You just, ganito na lang po gagawin natin for the Q&A. You just raise your hand and then we'll call your name para kayo po yung mag-ask ng question. Thank you. Ganito pa rin. I-on mo.
Ano natin doon?
Dito na. Ayun na sila. Sige, doon natin din.
Okay guys, sige.
Okay. Okay, we're so happy. Ang daming, para tayong online setting. Okay.
Grabe.
Okay, so let's start. Sino yung mga una nag-raise ng hand or nag-message ng may question? Yun yung tatawagin ko. Okay, Del, meron na ba tayong mga nag-question? Ang Liza, isa broker mo. Okay.
May questions?
Anong name tatawagin mo na lang siya mag-unmute siya? Okay, Miss Mary Grace, are you there?
Yes po, magandang
Okay,
hapon.
sige, Miss Mary Grace, you can proceed with your question to Attorney MJ and Attorney Ernie. Paano sila?
Good afternoon, Attorney
Pahay din
Joy,
sila.
Attorney Ernie. Thank you for that wonderful seminar po, very informative. Question lang po, Attorney, kasi po, my husband and I are thinking po of selling one of our personal properties. So I think it falls under capital asset. You have shared po two very helpful slides. Yung pong calculation po ng applicable tax, meron ka pong i-share na supposedly po ang capital asset is subject to a calculation po using the formula gross selling price or fair market value multiplied by the income tax rate, which has this 6% capital gains tax minus FWT po. So yung first question ko po is what does FWT stands for?
Ano yun, it's not minus FWT. I just wanted to note that the capital gains tax is a final withholding tax, no? Because there are also different types of withholding taxes. Meron tayong final withholding tax and we also have creditable withholding tax. So when you are applying capital gains tax, final withholding tax kasi.
Okay po. How does how does it work po for for illustration for better clarity? Assuming po we're selling the property at 5 million po. Paano po yung calculation po? Kasi minsan po nagtatanong din po yung mga buyers kung magkano po yung mga capital gains tax minsan kung gusto po namin ibenta na sila yung sasagot.
So to illustrate, no, if your selling price is 5 million, I think Attorney Joy explained earlier, no. So there is a uniform tax rate, capital gains tax of 6%, and then you want to multiply it to the selling price or to the fair market value, whichever is higher, no. Matalino kasi yung pagka-struktura ng ating batas, no. Kasi kung isipin mo kung ang magiging tax mo, ang basihan mo lang ay kung anong binenta mo, syempre you can manipulate it based on your deed of sale, no? Deed of absolute sale. So ang ginawa ng batas natin, ang basihan ng capital tax rate will be either the fair market value
Mhm.
or the fair market value or the kung ano yung nandun sa yung gross selling price, no?
Mm-mm.
which is based on your deed of absolute sale. When we talk about fair market value, dalawa rin yung titingnan mo. Primarily, yung nasa fair market value or zonal value, you can find doon sa website ng BIR. Okay?
Opo.
Or ano yung values tax deck. So practically, kung saan mo i-impose yung tax, you will take a look at those three values. Kung alin ang pinakamataas doon mo i-impose yung tax rate mo. So halimbawa, ang sa DOAS mo is 1 million. Pero ang fair market value sa zone, kita yan 800 lang. So that's 800, no? The zonal value. But it will post on the highest or on the higher value, which can be found in your DOAS, which is the 1
Okay.
million. So straightforward lang, you will multiply that, and that will be your 6% capital gains tax rate or
Okay po.
tax.
Just to thank you very much, attorney. Just to clarify po, kasi kasunod po nung ng slide na yun, in range from 2 million to not over 8 million, meron po siyang formula na tax due equals A
Okay.
plus B times C. So, bali po nakalagay doon po, basic amount, table A, nakalagay 402,500, tapos may 30% po sa table B, and then of excess over dun sa C, 2 million. How does it work po? Ano po yun? Meron po ba yung relationship doon sa capital gains tax o hiwalay pa po ba to?
When you are selling capital asset, the tax rate is fixed, no? Yung 6% capital gains tax. That's why during the lecture, I emphasize the importance of knowing the distinction when you are selling capital asset and ordinary asset. Kasi talagang magkakaiba yung taxation, no? Iba yung taxes applicable when you are selling capital asset and when you are selling ordinary asset. Yung nakita mo na table, no, with yung different tax rate, yung graduated tax rate. That is the tax rate applicable when what you are selling is ordinary asset. So,
Okay po.
pag individual ka, the applicable income tax rate on your net asset, your net income is yung graduated, yung between 15% to 35%. Now, if you are a corporation and you are selling ordinary asset, ang applicable sa iyo is yung 25% on your net income.
Okay. Copy po. Thank you very much, Attorney Joy. Thank you very much, Attorney Ernie. Helpful po.
Thank you.
Thank you po.
Sige. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so maraming salamat, Attorney MJ and Attorney Ernie. We'll have two more questions. Talagang talaga sila, Attorney. So, two more questions. Like, ano yung next, natin?
Sino nga yun? Let's see these.
Ano yan?
Herbert.
Sir Herbert? Sir Herbert? Are you there, sir? Okay, next is Grand Realty? Grand Galilee Realty.
Hi, hello. Good afternoon.
Ayun na. Okay.
Ayun. Thank you.
Ayan, okay. I have a question, okay, regarding, kasi right now, I'm a real estate broker. I'm registered as non-VAT, but eventually I might be registered as a VAT-registered real estate broker. Single proprietor po yung registration ko. But recently, I have a transaction, nagka-problem kami because the seller found out when we check with going to VAT-A. So it made me realize na baka next time pag naging VAT registered ako, mababat din ako if I sell a personal property. I want to pose this question to you. Kasi ang understanding ko, if you're a real estate broker, you are selling service. You are selling your for a fee, for a contract fee. You're not selling your own property, when you do as a real estate broker. Pero because of that incident, medyo na-delay yung transaction namin with BIR. So I want to pose this question. Based on what you know in terms of the regulation, should we be vatable? I mean, if for example, in the future, I sell a personal property, if I become VAT registered,
No,
yun lang.
syempre, to become a vatable person, I discussed earlier, di ba? It depends on what your gross annual receipts is, di ba? So ngayon, you said that you are still a non-VAT person. So this means that your gross annual receipts is less than 3 million. Now, once you have hit the threshold amount, which is 3 million or above, at end of the year, you have to update your registration from non-VAT to VAT. Okay.
Correct, yes.
As a practitioner, as a licensed broker.
Correct.
Now, you were right. As most likely capital asset, a vatable person, that sale shouldn't be subject to VAT. Kasi ang registration mo naman with the BIR is as a professional, as a practitioner. Hindi ka naman, remember, engaged in real estate business. If you remember my
Yes,
discussion
yes.
about that also. Once you are a taxpayer, whether you are an individual or a corporation, and you are engaged in real estate, state developer ka, real estate lessor ka, then whatever real properties you own will be treated as ordinary asset. So kapag asset, subject yan to income tax, subject yan to either percentage tax or
Okay. All right.
Okay. If I may add lang to what Attorney Joy said, she summarized it very distinctively. The business tax could either be VAT, and I think Attorney Joy explained it, or a percentage tax, which is before 3% reduced to 1%, but beginning July 1, 2023, it will revert back to 3%. So for all of you who are subject to percentage tax, it will revert back by July 1, 2023 to again 3%, from the previous 1%. But I think you've asked an interesting question, should I be VAT or should I be subject to percentage tax, which is kung titingnan mo, dati 1%, now 3%. VAT is 12%. So if you just base it on rate, sasabihin mo, baka better yung percentage tax, But if you're really into business, remember, being VAT, could either be a voluntary or a compulsory thing, If you hit the 3 million threshold, you ought to be a VAT registered person. But you can also exercise it as an option, Even if you don't hit the threshold, you may want to register as a VAT person. And what is the advantage of being output tax mechanism? Subject to output tax, you may end up not paying anything, You just have excess input tax which you can carry forward. Although the computation of the percentage tax is quite straightforward. Kung ano yung nabenta mo, kung ano yung receipts mo, you just subject it to 3%. On the other hand, yung VAT is quite tedious, You have to document it, you ought to have VAT receipts, pero may output input, may binabawas ka. Okay? Na kaya advantageous siya for big businesses who has like purchases kasi may input tax ka to offset it against your output tax, which is yung sa sales mo, Medyo complicated yung VAT input out. But I guess for brokers, most of us are into that percentage tax percentage tax regime, no, which is yun nga. Pero remember, pag sa percentage tax, outrightly you will be liable to pay. Unlike dun sa input output, it could be na wala kang babayaran, because if you have an excess input tax based on your purchases, you will end up not paying anything.
Okay, thank you.
It's simpler, I think, for us to stick to percentage taxes. But what I'm illustrating is that for some, it could be an optional thing, no, to go for being a VAT registered person, although the monitoring will be stricter and more tedious, and the documentation is more
Okay.
demanding.
Thank you so much, Attorney.
Thank you so much. At nakapila. Alam nyo guys, sa sobrang gusto namin ma-accommodate lahat, we just need to accommodate one last question, and then that's for Miss Digaya de Jesus.
Ligaya.
Miss Digaya.
Hello, sir.
Can you-
Hello, attorney. And just a follow-up question. Do I need to prove to BIR when I sell my capital asset and still I'm a broker? Do I need to prove something to BIR that this property that I will be selling is my capital asset?
If the seller, whether you're an individual, if you're an individual and you're a seller, the assumption is it is your capital asset unless you are engaged in trade or business. Now, if you are an individual engaged in trade or business and you use that real property that you are selling in your trade or business, then that can be classified as ordinary asset. Pero kung hindi ka naman individual ka, hindi ka naman engaged in trade or business, then the assumption is magiging capital asset mo lang yan. So nagkakaroon ngayon ng complication kung individual ka and engaged ka in trade or business. Kasi it's possible that you are using that real property in your trade or business. And then once you sell it, it may be treated as ordinary asset. And remember, when you are selling ordinary asset, it will be subject to income tax and business tax, diba? So nagiging iba kasi talaga yung taxation once you are selling ordinary asset. Pero kung hindi ka naman engaged in trade or business and you're just an individual or capital asset. Ayan.
But since I'm a broker nga, ma'am, and my property that was donated or given to us by in-laws or the relative of my husband, if we want to sell, so it will be considered as a capital asset. Then what do you mean by used in business? Or I'm residing or my office is in the place?
Okay. Ngayon, individual ka, siguro single, are you registered sa DTI?
No po, BIR lang registered, BIR registered
Okay.
lang.
Now, if you are you using the property as your
No,
office?
it's just in the province as a farm.
Okay. So pag ganun, it may be treated as a capital asset for investment purposes lang talaga. So hindi siya matitreat as ordinary.
Very clear.
Yeah. Okay. If I may add, no, Attorney Joy is correct na it really boils down to what are you doing with the property. Although siguro minsan makakatapat tayo ng iba-ibang BIR examiners who probes, no? Who ask questions, pero pag hindi naman, especially if it's not that substantial, although it is subjective, they will take it on based on your representation. But I think as seller of the property, no, you always ought to be ready with the proper look at. They look at kind of property that we will look at Joy saying, so they might ask for SEC registration or DI registration or kung saan ginagamit yung property. So basically you just ought to be ready based on your own representation.
So if for example, it is a condo unit, then I'm leasing it, that will be considered as ordinary asset.
Sorry, if you are,
Or if it is a condo unit and I'm leasing it,
leasing.
that will be considered a capital, ordinary asset.
Yes, because you are now engaged in the business of real estate lessor ka na.
Thank you po. Salamat po.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Ligay, for the questions on Attorney Ernie and Attorney MJ.
Attorney Ernie and Attorney MJ, full pack tayo ngayon sa mga abogado sa guesting dito. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng viewers again. Del, can you please share yung
As much as we want to accommodate all the questions, guys, sorry everyone, limited in time. But we'll invite you in the next our webinar then.
Yes, this is the first of the webinar series of Philinvest Alabang Inc. Brokers League. Again, maraming salamat Attorney MJ, Attorney Ernie. Guys, naka-flash sa screen ngayon yung
My
name and number ni RJ Embrado. Please have a screenshot. Diyan po kayo makikipag-coordinate for the... Iiwan naman po, nilambing natin mo please. Pipirmahan na niya. So, this is 20 sets of the book. Ayun po. And the next slide then.
Survivor po yan, ha, Fiverr.
We are the Philinvest Alabang Inc. Brokers League. Please like and follow our page para po updated kayo sa mga and lahat po. Thankful for Attorney MJ, Attorney Ernie. So again guys, maraming salamat.
Before we end this webinar, we would like to plug lang po the QC and RB series of event. We have this QC and RB membership night on July 8th. And we also have for the month of August the QC and RB Knowledge Power Town Hall. Wala pang specific date ito, pero for September naman, golf tournament will be happening to be announced po. So for those who are in Quezon City or would want to join, just follow the page po ng QC and RB.
Yes, that's QC and RB. Follow their page. And then again, this is John.
And I'm RJ Embrado and the rest of the Brokers sales team.
Maraming salamat po. See you on the next webinar. Thank you. Have a great day. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.